almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance, right? And of the rich just not paying their fair share. I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's allowed to speak about water.
Today we walk into this house with an iconic South African plant, the Alu Ferox. We must take the bitter with the sweet.
It is a matter that is under consideration, and all I would say is that watch this space.
Welcome to this week's episode of the SA Money Report. This financial podcast is brought to you by Fin24 and hosted by Deputy Editor Ahmed Arif.
Hello and welcome to another episode of SA Money Report. I'm your host, Deputy Fin24 Editor Ahmed Arif. Our weekly show helps to demystify and inform you, our dear listeners, about the newest, most interesting, or most crucial financial or business news in SA. We also provide you a quick peek behind the curtain on one of our big stories. This week we start off with the highly anticipated Spectrum auction, which still hasn't happened. The process hit another obstacle after the Independent Communications Authority, or ICASA, failed to reach an out-of-court settlement with the telecommunications companies involved in the process. A previous court ruling had interdicted the auction. Telkom, MTN and other companies had challenged the auction of high-demand spectrum, which was hoped would be used to speed up the rollout of new technologies like 5G. This process has been delayed by over a decade, and this was flagged numerous times, including by ratings agency Moody's, as holding SA's economy back. ICASA believes that the auction can take place by the end of January 2022, if the party stuck to what it says are the relevant matters. Telkom argued that allowing the auction process to go ahead in its current form would basically have entrenched skewed market conditions for the next 20 years. All this really means is that something integral that should have been sorted out a long time ago has been delayed again. And this is something our economy can't afford. Moving on, our next story concerns someone called David Mulherb. If that name doesn't ring a bell, he used to be a former senior manager at Eskom. This week, after serving roughly 5 years of an effective 15-year sentence for fraud and money laundering, he was acquitted by the Western Cape High Court. Mulherb was arrested with another suspect in 2013 after a whistleblower alerted the Hawks to irregularities in the power utilities awarding process. More specifically, they were between Eskom's subsidiary PN Energy Services and Mulherb's own company, Energy Utility Services. The second accused was granted immunity from prosecution after agreeing to testify against Mulherb. Mulherb was sentenced by the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Bellville in 2016. After previous attempts to appeal the ruling, the Supreme Court of Appeal eventually granted him leave to appeal, and the matter ended up at the Western Cape High Court in 2021, where he won his freedom. The High Court found that he had declared a conflict of interest and had taken steps to resign before the commencement of the contracts. It also found that the charge of fraud was ineptly drafted. Lastly, our main story of the day concerns the burnt-out, crumbling, apocalyptic husk we call the South African economy. Stats SA announced on Tuesday that the SA economy grew by 1.2% on a quarter-on-quarter seasonally adjusted basis during the second quarter of this year. This, it seems, is better than most economists' expectations. So, given the size and scope of the growth, is this good or just meh kind of news? And are we climbing out of that big COVID-19 shaped crater our economy fell into? To help us understand all of this is Fin24's Lamise Umerji. Hi there, Lamise. Starting off, we had a 1% growth in the first quarter and a 1.2% growth in the second quarter. While nobody obviously wants a recession, these figures do seem a bit paltry. While things weren't fantastic in 2019, does this mean our economy is out of the hole we fell into with COVID-19 last year? Or are we still busy trying to climb up out of it?
So I know in a pandemic, good news is hard to come by. And I think as a citizen, we should allow ourselves to celebrate growth of 1.2%, even if it is small and virtually flat. If you had to put this on a graph, the line would literally be flat. But I think when I spoke to economists, there was like a mixed bag. Some were, underwhelmed because they had penciled in 1% growth. And so, what's 1.2%? Like, how different is that to 1%? But then there were other economists who were like, saying this is way better than we expected. Of less than 1% growth, and as a signal that the recovery was happening at a faster pace than expected. I think it's important to note this isn't a full recovery. We're not back at pre-COVID levels. Stats SA said that the economy is still 1.4% smaller than in 2019 before the pandemic hit. But yeah, I think as a citizen, maybe less bad news is something to celebrate.
There was a bit of debate last week about the Department of Mineral Resources not supplying Stats SA with the last month of mining data. This is, of course, in the midst of a big commodities boom. So has this whole thing been resolved?
Last week when I spoke to Stats SA, they said they didn't have the June figures from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, but they had the May and April figures, and they were going to use that along with, data on exports, because, as you mentioned, we have a commodities boom. Most of our exports are driven by, precious metals, that sort of thing. So they were going to use those to estimate the mining contribution to GDP, but it turns out that the department actually managed to send them the information on Friday, last week Friday, and Stats SA managed to incorporate that into the GDP figures. And this showed that mining GDP increased by 1.9% during the quarter. And it was actually one of 6 industries which recorded positive growth during that quarter. The other big one was agriculture. And Stats SA also said they are now going to release the June mining data along with July mining data next week. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy actually did get back to me about what the reason for the delay in sending the information was, and they said they were experiencing technical challenges related to IT infrastructure. That was their email to me, and they said they're tending to it and a solution is imminent. But they also said they don't see another challenge or delay like this happening again, because they're going to tend to the IT infrastructure, which I guess has probably delayed them in other respects, not just with the stats.
So you mentioned mining, and I'm wondering if you can talk us through, along with mining, what other sectors do we credit with helping us with this 1.2% growth, and conversely, what's kind of dragged us down?
Yeah, so the largest contributor to GDP was the transport, storage and communication industry. That lifted 6.9%. And other major contributors was personal services. That could be things like hairdressers. And the trade and catering and accommodation industry also helped boost figures. That lifted 2.2%. Agriculture was again one of the top contributors. It increased 6.2%, mainly benefiting from increased production of field crops. And one economist actually noted that agriculture is a major employer, and that is significant that it is, growing. But sadly, we have manufacturing and construction industries which reported declines, and they are industries which happen to be job creating industries. So it's important to get these going, because maybe we could see something change in the employment side of things. Finance also was down. It sounds small, 0.4%, but then again, finance is the largest industry in our country, accounting for 23%. Another interesting thing was investments, or what Stats SA calls gross fixed capital formation. That lifted. Mainly, it could have been companies buying machinery and equipment, that sort of thing. But an economist pointed out they could have just delayed these things in previous quarters, and now they're just investing in it now. And it's not something really we can get too excited about, because we can't just read this as a signal that investments are up, because we have the whole interruption in the third quarter that could have dampened investment.
So Stats SA recently rebased and benchmarked the national accounts, which basically showed that the economy is 11% bigger than previously estimated in 2020. So what's the significance of this, especially in measuring this year's GDP?
Economists basically said this impacted, well, it made it difficult to do forecasting for the second quarter GDP, so ahead of the GDP release this week. The rebasing sort of applied to all the previous years leading up to 2020, but statistics didn't give a revision for the first quarter GDP when those figures came out. But when GDP came out this week, they then gave a revised figure for first quarter GDP, and that was that we didn't grow 1.1% as expected, but actually 1% in the first quarter. So it mainly just impacted forecasting.
Okay, so talking about forecast and prognostication, what's on the horizon with the third quarter, Lamise, and what's the expectations for what's going to happen to our economy?
As I was working on the story, I felt like, we couldn't really celebrate that the economy expanded in the second quarter because we had like this cloud hanging over us called the July unrest, as well as lockdown level 4 restrictions which applied in the earlier part of the third quarter. And these are sort of risks. They're presenting risks to the growth outlook for the third quarter. In fact, many economists said, we can expect weak growth. Surprisingly, no one committed to saying that we're going to contract in the third quarter, but definitely it's going to be weaker than what we saw in the second quarter. There is an expectation that whatever was lost in the third quarter, the fourth quarter will make up for it. And we could potentially see 2021 growth at between 4% and 5%. But then again, there's the risk of a fourth wave, and again, whether we will have intense lockdown restrictions depends on the vaccine rollout. So that's what economists pointed out. But generally, not such a great third quarter, but still optimistic about the annual growth, if I can put it that way.
Thank you for your time, Lamise.
Thanks for having me.
This brings our show to an end. The music in this episode is courtesy of Getty Images and Epidemic Sound. This week's installment was produced with the help of Kayleen Morgan. Thank you for listening.